What I'm not doing is having my weeks completely planned for the next couple of months. And what I'm finding is that, let's say if I keep Wednesday, Thursday, Friday wide open, I do attend to company stuff. And I do call someone and I have an idea and share that with someone and I get shit done. But that stuff is very focused, it's very clear. It's happening from a strong creative energy because I have the space to tap into it.
Hey there, I'm Benedict, co-founder and CEO of Jamie. And at Jamie, we're dedicated to understanding how top performers operate, enhance their productivity, and scale companies. That's why I'm thrilled to have Bjoern Keune on the podcast. Bjoern is a serial founder and one of the earliest investors in Jamie. He was among the pioneers who leveraged influencer marketing and used it to build Invincible Brands, which he later sold to Henkel for around 300 million. Even though his entrepreneurial path sounds like picture perfect, Bjoern could not always enjoy the entrepreneurial journey. So after his breakthrough success, Bjoern has been on a personal journey of transformation and founded Dean & Young Ventures and Acta, through which he now backs founders who prioritize personal growth and balance alongside business success. In this episode, we will talk about how Bjoern rebuilt his life after massive entrepreneurial success, why he invests based on people first, and how he approaches productivity and work today. Thank you for being here, Bjoern.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Is there anything that you would like to add about yourself? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but anything that you would like to highlight?
No, I think that sounds pretty complete, what you've just shared.
Okay, perfect. Then let's actually jump in chronologically and let's start directly with your morning. So I'd be super curious, how do you start your workday now? And how has this maybe changed to your time at Invincible Brands?
With Invincible Brands, my start in the day consisted of 2 painkillers and an espresso. Then afterwards, breakfast. At least in the last, let's say last year or so. Today, my start of the day is 1 hour in quiet meditation. So I get up and before I touch my phone or before I do anything else, I sit in meditation for roughly 1 hour. That makes a totally different experience of how the day is starting and unfolding. And it's just insane how different that feels.
It sounds like a massive change and also a way healthier approach now. I assume then back in the days also at Invincible Brands, you didn't have the rule of having no phone for the first hour, but you probably jumped into emails, or how did?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, before the painkillers and the espresso, I would open my phone and answer to the most important messages that came in during night or from people that were up before me. And then I would start the day. So basically, I would start the day already activated and my mind already thinking about all the things that are going to happen today, that have happened last night, and all the stuff that I need to do. So basically just starting the day already stressed.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it would be actually cool to hear from you a quick overview of what Invincible Brands is and was. I mentioned the number for which it got sold for, but maybe you can shed some light on what it was exactly for those that don't know.
Yeah, totally. So Invincible Brands is a e-commerce brand builder. I think I co-founded the company at the end of 2015. Yeah, 2015. And these were really the early days of influencer marketing. So back then, it was still possible to do influencer marketing on Facebook, for example, which then 2 years later, didn't exist anymore. And what we did is we looked at market trends and we're trying to see, okay, what are products and brands that we could sell well through influencers. Once we had an early indication for what could work, we created a brand and created products. These were mainly in cosmetics and food supplements. And then we're just working with influencers. So we had, towards the end, we introduced meta ads and everything, but the first couple of years were influencer marketing only. And then we rolled that out across Europe. So we usually started in one country and we were looking at, okay, in which country can we gain traction early and then scale profitably? And then basically just entered one market after the other. And we had kind of like a standard playbook on how to scale a brand within cosmetics or food supplements fast in a certain country within influencer marketing. And then we just followed that playbook. And with that, I think there were many companies that started in that market segment around that time. we were just much faster, way more aggressive, and way more disciplined when it came to our operations. And then, honestly, just ruthlessly executed along our playbook. And with that, achieved that scale of, I think at peak times, we did 120 million of sales. And we're roughly 300 people before we sold the company then to Henkel. And all of that within 5 years, basically.
Oh, I mean, that's like within a crazy time frame. And especially if you scale that like profitably, that's very impressive. What I would be curious about, you mentioned that it was a lot about execution. What would you say was important there? I mean, was it just working longer hours? Was it that you prioritized super well, or what helped?
So, I would say it was really mainly only about execution. Like, we weren't the most innovative. We weren't the most purpose-driven, whatever company. We were the company that was just like really focused on growth and fast growth, and on really strong execution. And I think there were a couple of components to it. So definitely long hours. I still remember the first couple of years, even where like the majority of the team would spend time in the office until like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., or anything like that. So I wouldn't say it was the only thing, but it played a role that, like, we as the founders, but then also the team just put in massive effort and worked long hours. So that's one component. And then really clear priorities, clear focus, like not looking left, right, or center. Always being clear in, okay, what's our target? And then just from there working backwards, okay, how do we get there? Define the necessary actions and then go execute. And really not get distracted. Like, at this time, there were so many opportunities that we could have gone into. But I think what has really helped us is to, like, as long as we were growing fast enough, not look too much at, things outside of what we are already doing. And really trying to see, okay, what's the maximum that we can get to by just doing more of what we are already doing. And not like trying to, come up with the greatest innovation while we are still growing with like 10% a month or so. It's just not needed to do that. Then at later stage, obviously that became more important to be more innovative. But for the first couple of years, this just didn't matter. And then speed. Always prioritize speed over, let's say, the fear of breaking something. So I think one thing that we were really good at is to say, let's say you have a market that is kind of like, more established, and there obviously we had like rules and guidelines and certain things we wouldn't do. This doesn't mean that the team that would sit like just next to that team that is maybe working on a market that is way smaller wouldn't be allowed to do these things. So we are allowed to like break things to then put them together afterwards to unlock, 10x growth here and there. And we managed that very carefully between like more established markets that were driving the profitability, and then markets that needed to be grown and where we needed to still be, the number one player. So that was also there. And then at the same time operating with, like, while we had that playbook and while things were like pretty clear and straightforward in terms of how we execute, there was also freedom for people to like try new things. And we really had a very strong trial and error mindset. We said it's fine to fail, but then learn, adapt, and do it differently again. Which is whatever, doesn't matter what you do, just do it fast.
Yeah, those are some interesting points. And also, I mean, you mentioned like working long hours, and I feel like currently like there's always like this big debate. Yeah, you need to do 996 or even like more extreme hours, let's say, in order to succeed. And I mean, also like the way that you work and that reflects on the way that you start your day shifted heavily from the time at Invincible Brands. What I would be curious about, would you say that everything you've done back then, like, say, for example, waking up at, I don't know, probably super early and then checking emails first thing and then going to bed late at night, was that needed to make Invincible Brands such a success? Or would you say like your new way of working kind of would have resulted in a similar?
I would say the amount of effort and energy that went into the company was definitely needed. However, it could have been structured in a way more smart way. So I would say this extreme power, energy, and the drive, and like the willingness to really lean in and give it my all, so to say, that is, I still believe that is needed to grow a successful company. And then there are ways how to bring that energy in a less energy draining, smarter, more efficient, clear way that I simply wasn't aware of. So that's my view on that.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I mean, now with Acta, I think you have the space to actually embrace that, right? What I would be curious about is what tools or practices that can be like digital tools, but also analog, are now part of your daily, let's call it productivity or operating stack.
So I would say the main thing is definitely meditation. And within meditation, I mean, there are like so many tools and techniques out there from all sorts of wisdom traditions, but then all newer kind of methods how to meditate. And there's one particular thing that I have learned through Zen, which is what we call hara meditation, which is basically accessing the inherent life force energy that flows through all of us. And that's a method that we use to enable people to really access their most powerful states, let's put it like that. States where they can tap into creativity, but can also tap into power and then use that and bring it out in a very clear, very focused way and then get shit done. So that's one thing. Apart from this, like there are more, let's say, more open kind of formats of meditation that help to just calm down and clear the mind. So really meditation has many different benefits and really depends on what type of meditation I'm choosing to start my day or like also during the day. For example, if you do hara meditation at like 10 p.m., not a good idea because you won't be able to sleep. If I do it in the morning, I can skip the coffee and everything else. If I do it after lunch, it's quite helpful. So meditation is a big piece of the tools that we are using. Then there's also coaching, which simply helps to become aware of, what are my patterns? Like, because many times, chains of thought and like patterns and fears and these type of things get in the way of, let's say, fast, efficient, creative execution. So with coaching, we then enable, or I for myself also enable myself to get my mind out of my own way. It's quite funny to see how that works, but really sometimes the mind just gets in the way of the flow. People like to talk about the flow, and I think there is a flow of life, and then mind gets in the way. So coaching helps to get out of the way and then get clarity. For me personally, I need clarity. Once I have clarity, I can move super fast. When I don't have clarity, then I can't bring through my full energy. So coaching, another very important tool. Apart from that, there's also breathwork. And actually, two different ways of doing breathwork. Like we also use more mind-based techniques that the stuff that you can do within like 10, 15 minutes, where you just breathe in a certain way consciously, and that just clears the mind and also fuels the body with like more oxygen and then helps you to just feel recovered and more energized. And then there are breathwork modalities where like you breathe for 2 hours in a certain way and it's actually happening subconsciously, and that helps to like, dive deeper in the subconscious and supports the coaching process, I would say. And then we really have another thing which I think is really important is we do sharing circles where we just, we open them with meditation or some form of modality. It could also be breathwork, and then really focus on recognizing the connection as human beings, like as we are in that space in a circle, and then everyone get to share deeply around, okay, that's a fear I have, or that's a worry that I have, or that's what's driving me. And then we really create a space that is safe enough to express deep things, which is also a liberating experience. So if I get to express myself fully, then my mind will be less likely to get in the way of me, following the flow and building something. And I mean, we as human beings, there's like one of our core desires is to feel connection, social connection, and to feel safe in that and have community. So we, really focus on that, but then building community and having a social system that is deep, like not the shallow, like, let's have a drink after work and then, complain about my colleague kind of thing and get slightly drunk. No, that's not what we do. So we come together in circle and share deeply and create connections through that, which is ultimately, next to like food and sleep and water, something we as human beings need in order to thrive. Without connection, it won't work. So Yeah, I think that's the main components that I see.
Yeah, I mean, Acta, I think it's like an amazing and also very ambitious project that you're doing there, and I think also something that's so important to be done and to be brought into the world. One thing that I'm curious about, you mentioned that meditation, for example, is one of your number one productivity hacks. What I notice about myself sometimes, it's becoming less and less, is that sometimes doing meditation, especially like if it's maybe like a little bit later in the morning, I have my mind switched on saying, okay, that's not something productive. You should work on something productive. You should do emails. You should do slides or whatever needs to be done. How do you actually, does this feeling, first of all, ever go away? And second of all, how do you balance like inner work and then the outer work, which is like task meetings, strategy, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would personally say it never goes away because it has its place. It's useful. The place where that comes from is the place of within us that wants to create and do and get shit done and, bring stuff out into the world. It's extremely useful. It's not, it becomes a problem the moment that this is not balanced. So I would say it's good that it's there. Let it be there. Nothing wrong with it. And meditation is the opportunity to look at that and let it be there and not do anything with it immediately. I think what doesn't work is to say, oh, that part shouldn't be there. Let's just find a way so that doesn't come back. No, it's very useful. It has its place. It's great that it's there. Otherwise, you wouldn't get up of bed and get shit done, right? And then it would be difficult to build a company. And then the practice can be to allow that part to be there and have its stories and have its plans and have its strategies and honor them and look at them and say, yeah, thank you for great mind for telling me all these things. I will tend to that, but not now, maybe in half an hour. Because otherwise, this is just, I think these thoughts, as important as they are, is just one part of reality, so to say. And it's important to have a very broad perspective. And that is a space that can open a meditation where these things are there and there are other things.
Mm-hmm. Is this part still active from time to time for you?
Totally. Every morning. Because now 20 years of building companies, this is deeply ingrained and conditioned into my system to get up and do stuff. I still catch myself sometimes attending to my phone first thing in the morning. It just happens, natural. Stuff that has been conditioned for 20 years doesn't disappear from one day to another, and it also doesn't disappear within a year or 2 or 3 or 5. But in the end, if I just manage to more often not follow the old habit and follow a new one, that's all that is needed. And honestly, the best practice is that if it happens and if that part wins in the morning, and I recognize that a few hours later, to then not feel bad or anything, but just, okay, that's how things went, and tomorrow I can choose again.
So it's really then about acceptance and just letting it be there, kind of.
Yeah, totally.
I remember there was an article from Gründerszene where you shared your calendar, which was quite free, I would say, and quite uncommon in comparison to the other calendars that were being checked there. Has that changed? Because since then you've co-founded Acta, built up a team there also. Do you still protect your calendar that heavily, or is your calendar now looking more like doing the Invincible Brand days?
No, it's still way more protected. So, for example, it depends a bit on the week, but sometimes I have a week where I say no meetings before 1 p.m. or no meetings before 12 p.m., anything like that, because I do prioritize my, let's say, practice quite a lot, and I need space for that in the morning. It definitely looks different to last year, but I also really like to keep things open. So, for example, I would set time to speak with Louis, my co-founder, and then that is just a 3 hours block, but that could be half an hour, it could be 3 hours, could be 1 hour. What I'm not getting back into is this structure of one meeting after the other. That's not productive, that doesn't work. And I try, and sometimes this is needed because, there are times where just stuff needs to get done, and for that I need to speak to X amount of people. What I then try to do is to dedicate days to a certain purpose. For example, if my purpose is to call 5 investors, then I say, okay, Wednesday is a day where I do that. Then I do this, and I do 5 or 10 of these calls, and like the day is packed with that. And then the next day, the same times are completely free, and I follow the flow. And the flow might even lead me into the office and might lead to me sitting down with a team. It might also lead somewhere else. What I'm not doing is having, let's say, 5 meetings every day that have to do with completely different topics, and that happens every day throughout the week. And what I'm also not doing anymore is like having my weeks completely planned for the next couple of months, even something like that. And what I'm finding is that, let's say if I keep Wednesday, Thursday, Friday wide open, I do attend to company stuff. And I do call someone, and I have an idea and share that with someone, and I get shit done. But that stuff is, first of all, it's very focused, it's very clear. It's happening from a strong creative energy because I have the space to tap into it.
So I assume you're not one of the people doing time boxing or time blocking and saying this 1 hour time slot is for meditation, this one is to work on project X.
No, not really. The meditation slot in the morning is pretty much set in stone. I mean, varies by 15, 20 minutes depending on when I get up and whatever. But apart from that, I really try to feel into, okay, what does a moment need, and then follow that, which can lead to some frustrations of people that are working with me, clearly. And I'm noticing that this following that flow and surrounding myself with people that understand that and have a similar approach works really. Just today was a perfect example. Like I had meetings scheduled with Luis, and then he said hey, actually, I'm just feeling like I really want to do this and that with the team. I said, yeah, sounds great. I will join you for that. And we had a very deep session with the team. And what we had scheduled originally didn't happen. But then it did happen, but to a much smaller extent. And we had a very, really nice experience with the team, which was completely not on the agenda when I got up in the morning. But it felt right in the moment to do it. You know what I mean? I think that's really important. And then there is a certain amount of time, and I think that's fine, that needs to be put into structured meetings. And there again, it comes down to balance. Like only flow week doesn't work for a company. But the only structure and only meetings and only recurring events week is also not a good idea. So it comes down to balance.
Would you say that also in this flow state, when you have the freedom, this is where the best ideas actually come up?
Yeah, totally. I would say to that fear has its origin in the mind. So if I'm constantly in my mind and very active, it's likely that I will take decisions from a place of fear, because fear is really originated in the mind. If I create space, then fear is there, and so is other stuff. And I can look, at, let's say, beyond the fear. And then act more courageously on the things that I do, and maybe come up with ideas that are simply bigger and more ambitious and feel better and more creative. If I'm stuck in my mind, very likely I will get lost in fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah. And it makes sense. Yeah. One thing that I think we've talked about a lot also in the past, or one thing that you mentioned, is that you started to, automate maybe with humans, or delegate then quite a lot early on, right? Could you maybe share some more on that? Because I think that was quite unique in terms of timing when you started delegating tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically one of the first things that, I don't remember exactly when, but very early in the journey, I hired an executive assistant. Even we were still small. I wasn't really making, my assistant made way more money than me when I hired her. I didn't pay myself a big salary. Company was struggling. We didn't have much runway, but I knew that I need leverage. And it's still the case today. I personally do not have access to my bank account. I don't do this type of work. I simply don't. I don't want it, and I don't do it. And that started very, very early on. I was just simply delegating everything that was not mission critical. So I look at things and say, is that mission critical? Does that need my energy, my attention, and my creativity and my brain to like get the best result possible? If no, I don't touch it. I rather just let it sit and burn, and then maybe it eventually hits the wall and it's a big chaos, but I just don't touch it. I completely refuse to touch it. And that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think focus is so important, and I only have so much energy, and it needs to be directed into that, what is truly important to me and what has the biggest impact. And of course, sometimes then I do stuff that I don't want to do because I can't delegate everything, but yeah. It's, and another example is my first company, that's now more than even 12 years ago, but
That was Arzttermine, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were super small. We hadn't had any money. And I would use a taxi every morning to get to the office. Why? Because it would give me 30 minutes of productive time where I can get shit done instead of driving or riding a bike. Right? So I'm really, really big fan of delegating everything that is not mission critical. I think it's such an important, and there are then people say what's the fuck? How can you hire an assistant? You haven't proven to be a successful businessman. How can you afford an assistant? In order to become that successful business person, I need leverage. If I get stuck in busy work, I won't get there. At least that's my view.
Yeah. How did it actually land with investors? I mean, because you did raise money in the past, right? And then it's uncommon for a founder to directly hire an executive assistant or drive with a taxi to work. Or was it just not a topic?
I think never would anyone go to that detail in our P&L to see what the fuck, why do you have 50 taxi receipts and who's that person, what are they doing? It's simply my way of operating, and it supported the results that I was driving, and I simply needed that. It's super important to me, and I still have that today. Also, I'm working less. I still have someone that takes on most of the busy work that I would otherwise have to do.
Yeah, cool. A very, very cool approach. Talking about approach, with Acta now you're doing many things differently to what you were doing at Invincible Brands and how you approach company building. I think you already mentioned some parts, but what else are you doing differently when you think about now building Acta? Maybe you can also quickly shed on some more light on what you're doing there in comparison to Invincible Brands.
So I think a very big difference is that Acta is very purpose-driven. So we only build products that we build for ourselves, that we truly care about, and that where we can see that they eventually will have, let's say, a net positive impact on humanity. And we don't touch stuff that the world doesn't need, let's say. That's one big component. And then the second is how we build the company, with the tools, modalities I mentioned before that focus on connection, focus on authenticity, creating a space where truth can be spoken and shared. People can be vulnerable and open and also express their fears and their desires and everything. And then we bring that together and from there craft a strategy really rooted in deep human connection. I think that is what makes it very special. And we also pretty much while we are driving things and pushing things forward and are ambitious, we also pretty much surrender to that, what happens, and then work with, whatever comes up in the moment. So let's say we define something and totally convinced this is the right thing to do. And then we see that something else is needed. We are ready to just make a shift and change that strategy again. And we're really committed and dedicated to helping people, first for ourselves, for Luis and me as entrepreneurs, but then also for the people that work with us, to have them find what they truly care about, where they have passion for, what is it that makes them feel alive and fulfilled. And when we see that and notice that, then we encourage them to create from that place. And we also, for ourselves, we constantly check in okay, where do we feel excited? Where do we feel alive? What is this? How connected is that, what we do right now, to our hearts and what we want to bring to that world? And then we follow that impulses, even if that means to, change the strategy 3 times a week. We are really focused on that. Because I personally, the way I see it is, we are not educated through the school system, later on university, and definitely not in corporate, to discover and live our, let's say, inner genius. There's simply no training in it. And at the same time, that's where we as human beings are most powerful. If we are fully tapped into what drives us, where we have access to creativity, where we have access to life force energy, where we thrive on, we can do things that are much more powerful and much bigger and have way more impact than and since there is no training in society, and at least in the regular system, let's say, how to access these states and then how to create from them, we do that with Acta for our people. And we're also planning on everything that we learn in terms of how to create, how to access these states, how to really like discover and unleash your potential. We are bringing together all these learnings in kind of a school system that we will make available to everyone. It's not live yet, but it's part of the mission that we have to allow them, other people that are not with Acta yet to also benefit from that.
How does it work out? I mean, hiring probably looks much different now than it used to at Invincible Brands, because now you probably don't just check the CV and look whether the person has been at a good business school or some other university. What do you look for now when hiring people at Acta?
I mean, we obviously still look for a certain level of like skills and stuff and experience, right? Then we also look for the level of awareness, like how aware is a person about their own patterns and what really drives them and these type of things. We also check for how tapped in is that person.
Mm-hmm.
We check for how much fear is present in someone, like someone acting from a place of fear, while it might be possible to like work through that and eventually get to a point where like they're not operating from a place of fear. If that is too big, we wouldn't have enough time to help that person get there. So we want to be conscious about like, okay, if someone joins, there needs to be a realistic chance for them to really tap into their power within a certain time frame. It's hard to explain. It's like, it comes from experience. Like I have pretty strong gut feel when it comes to these things, and I just trust my gut feel usually. And then there's a fun thing that a friend recommended to me recently, and it's something we are in a certain way also checking in. If there are doubts about hiring someone or not, ask yourself the question if you would hug that person. If you wouldn't give that person a hug after the interview for whatever reason, there's a deeper reason why you shouldn't hire that person. Like the body says no to that, and that's fine. It doesn't mean this is a bad person. It simply means something is not aligned. It's actually pretty cool. So it shouldn't be the one and only criteria, but if there's doubt and you wouldn't give that people a long hug, don't hire them. And I think that's just an example of like how trusting gut feel in recruiting is extremely important. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't heard that one before.
I think it's pretty cool, honestly. And
yeah. And I mean, it's quite easy to answer that question. So yeah.
You will know immediately.
Yeah.
You don't need to sit with it for long. Either you feel it or you don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see inner work fitting into like the future of high performance entrepreneurship?
I think it does a couple of things. So the one is obviously like there has been decades of like, a hustle culture where like it was only about work and status and money and power and these type of things. And it's partly still there, and like a part of the system that we have built in the Western world will always consist of that. And then their inner works help me to not get lost in it and to, let's say, move through that system in a more healthy way. So I think inner work, meditation, all these tools and practices simply help to perform in a healthy way and not get lost in the system. Apart from that, I would say that the fact that all the money, all the power, all the status in that world is ultimately not fulfilling is becoming more and more public knowledge. And while there is nothing wrong with like striving for a certain financial goal or whatever, it's more and more people start sharing and speaking about it and sharing experiences that like they got to their target and felt empty and it didn't work. So I think there's a new answer needed. And that answer is inner work, is like discovering, okay, what is that truly gives me fulfillment and actually really makes me happy. And that is not to deny that we have, for example, financial desires and that having financial freedom isn't a nice place to be in. Nothing wrong with it. And it's ultimately not fulfilling. It doesn't deliver on its promise. And I think, a few generations back, the clarity around, for example, money not fully delivering on its promise was less there than it is today. So inner work can help to find answers there. And then last point, people that are, say, let's call them high-performing entrepreneurs for now. These are all people who are having a real impact on humanity and society, the way they structure the companies, the way they treat people, and so on, right? And with that, in a certain way, comes I don't like the word so much, I still use it, responsibility. And obviously there isn't any responsibility. At the same time, there can be one. And I can take on that responsibility if I want to. And at the same time, we see that the way we are operating on that planet simply doesn't work out. There has been for hundreds of years, there has been no real tangible improvement in the distribution of funds, for example. You have poverty on the one side and you have like excess accumulation of wealth on the other hand. And inner work enabled then entrepreneurs to use all the impact and power that they have built in that world through their companies to reduce suffering in the world and help to start solving the very big problems. And to be clear, to be honest, with solving the big problems in that world, I'm not talking about climate change and all that stuff. I'll stop here, otherwise I say stuff that will offend people. But the fundamental problems are that we don't realize the interconnectedness of all human beings and actually all beings on that planet. And the real problem is that we don't have enough compassion for each other. That's why we continue to push excess wealth accumulation on the one hand, while exploiting other countries. And that can be changed through inner work. When we go deep enough and practice enough and just have enough experiences, we will realize oh shit, we are actually all connected. And with that, there will be more compassion. And with the more compassion, I will at some point maybe stop my excess wealth accumulation and start to think, okay, what does humanity really need? And now with that, I'm not claiming that I'm perfect in that myself. But I'm definitely stepped out of the game of accumulating more wealth. And I say that from a place of most people would call me quite wealthy. And most people that I know in my peer group just continue accumulating. And you have 10 million, 100 million, 100 million need to become 1 billion. What the fuck? Why? Why would we need that? So yeah, that's why I need inner work is important to change the fundamentals and basics how we live together on that planet as human beings. And then we can also look at the climate crisis and other stuff.
I feel like that would be a beautiful ending, but I do have one last question.
Go for it.
And that's, how does someone get started with inner work? What's the advice or one piece of advice you would give to founders that want to get started with that?
I think the easiest access point is coaching. Find a coach that, and don't try to think about it too much. Try to see how do I feel in a session. And let go of the idea of I need to achieve something, I need to solve a problem, I need to learn something about. Just check in, do I feel safe here? And maybe do I feel like I get a little bit closer to myself? And then continue to access this space with your coach as often as you can. I think that is really the starting point. Meditation through Headspace and these type of things has its small benefits and there's probably nothing wrong with it, but the impact is not strong enough. And I would also say, if I haven't done the work on my mind with a coach, for example, chances are I will struggle big time with meditation and other stuff, because when I sit in silence, shit's going to come up. But when I developed a certain capacity and awareness and have been met in a compassionate safe, non-judgmental space by a person that can really open me. And there are good coaches out there that can provide that space. And once I have made that experience, I might want to open to meditation or to breathwork and to whatever else. And if I feel like, oh, coaching is not for me, and my mind tells me, oh, I don't need coaching. Two things with that. One is, if your mind tells you that, you definitely need coaching. And the second thing is, you might want to try an experience, which then could be breathwork, which is something that gets the mind out of the way and opens me to something deeper. And with that, there might then be the awareness of, shit, maybe I should really work with a coach.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. And I mean, also, I think was one of the first things that we did when we started working together. So yeah, I can only recommend it. I'm very grateful. So also thank you for being here and for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Who should reach out to you, and how could people reach you?
Ideally on LinkedIn. I try to answer most questions or messages I receive personally and fast, but I might need a week or two or so. Definitely LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. And yeah, right now we're looking for founder engineers at Acta. We're also looking for people that want to drive the, let's say, marketing business side of the products that we are building. And also any entrepreneur who's interested in embarking on a different journey should just reach out. And I'm always happy to have a chat.
Cool. Then I will add the links into the show notes, also the career site for Acta. Thanks again, Bjoern. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
And talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.